Okay. Hi, so, as folks just said, I'm Simon Blackmore, and I'll just quickly explain my background, which is a kind of multimedia sort of artist working with electronic sculpture and a whole range of things, separate to this kind of paper, exploring kind of kinetic materiality and information. And this is a kind of sonification piece within a practice that I've got called the Owl Project, where there's three of us, Steve Simons, who's going to be here later but can't make it, and Anthony Hall, and we worked together and we did this piece where these machines kind of made sound from water in a kind of very analog sort of way from a river, and had a load of contraptions making kind of sound out of water, which I won't go into now, but that's the kind of background that I come from, of years of making this sort of thing. So this paper and demonstration explores how computer signals could be conceived as musical patterns that can be performed and translated into information. We've had many descriptions of sonification, and I guess it could basically be described as the conversion of data to audio. And if that's the case, here I'm going to explore a form of reverse sonification where sounds produced by the body are converted into visually displayed text. And this forms part of my PhD research that I'm currently doing at Oxford Brookes University. So, in a book of essays called Post-Digital Aesthetics, the artist and thinker Shintaro Miyazaki argues that the signals that transmit information and form the basis of our digital world should be analysed by the ear, the hands, and the whole body. And he gives a number of fascinating examples where this has been the case. And it includes kind of things like the Pegasus computer made by Ferranti here in Manchester, who he interviewed some of the people who worked on this machine, and he conducted an interview with someone called Christopher P. Burton, who said contact failures were very common where plug-in package connectors to the backplate had a poor connection. These would be detected by running the test program set to continue running despite failures, and then listening to the rhythmic sound while going around the machine, tapping the hardware with the fingers or with a tool, waiting for the vibration to cause a fault and thus change the rhythm of the tune. So from clockmaking to Morse code to phreaking, we could pick out loads of cases from past eras where the ear has been important in working with technology, but the increase in speed of computers and their processors have made these things more and more inaudible and harder to perceive. In another essay by Shintaro called Algorithms Everywhere, he paraphrases Frederick Kittler, who pointed out that humans are machines with very low frequency bandwidths. So it's kind of fair to say that computers have kind of exceeded our bandwidth many years ago and now process information much faster than we can kind of dream of. And so to give an example of Shintaro's work, I need to plug in a sound. So that's an example of sort of sonifying kind of information flowing through a circuit, done through electromagnetic sensors and pickups and that kind of thing. And it's a kind of area that many artists like Christine Kubrich has explored, and artists kind of continue to explore. And but if our perceptual bandwidth is limited, as Kittler suggests, I wonder how much these sonifications can help understand the logic of digital signals, let alone the information encoded in them. So with this in mind, the approach to my research has been to go back to the basics and to consider how computers convert signals into data, and how the human body, without the aid of additional instruments, can make sounds that can be interpreted by a computer as information. So Yeah, so let's listen to some a basic serial communication between two computers. So I've got a I did an audio recording of such a thing here, and just try to slow the sound of it. So that was a load of letters transferring quite fast, and you just hear a blip. So we could kind of go through the process of slowing that down, and you hear something like which literally does sound like that, a sort of low frequency hum. And so it's hard to kind of hear any source of information within that. Here is an actual kind of diagram of the transmission of a letter A and how it looks as a kind of a graphic. If we wanted to think about this in a traditionally musical way, the first thing we might do is to take a bite of information and think about it in terms of beats, where there is perhaps this could be a beat and those could be rests, and we could think about it in that way. That's very faint, the line up there. Okay, so that's kind of got you can't quite see the line at the top. The signal's at the top, and then we kind of have the representation of the letters and then the noughts and ones. And we could think about it in a sort of, a musical way, and we could divide up I'll go back to this one, it's easier. We have 10 bits, and we could think of it as a musical phrase of 5/4, something like that. So what I kind of became interested in is actually how can we sort of play about with that? What kind of traditions of music are around where we could learn how to actually play in that sort of way? So the styles, I've kind of been studying forms of music which I feel sort of deal with that kind of complexity of rhythm that a computer possibly doesn't, and the sort of ability to improvise within it. So I've kind of been, so far, kind of looking at Cuban rumba, which has a kind of rumba and batal, which have kind of heavy forms of improvisation, flamenco, and a South Indian Carnatic kind of music called conical. And these art forms all require many lifetimes of study, which would be impossible for me to kind of give. So I've kind of approached them as an enthusiastic amateur, but been fortunate enough to study with some amazing people, such as Jose Manuel Leon, who's a flamenco guitarist, and rumberos, including Christian Weaver, who's here in Manchester, and Yosvani Diaz-Hero in Havana. So I've kind of been learning with those people, and I'll just kind of show you the contrast here. So for my involvement in these kind of forms of music, I would say that they, how can they help us sort of develop a way of playing with information? And I'd say that kind of both of these forms of music, even though they're very different, kind of share an intimate knowledge of the rhythmic framework used to transmit the information. Flamenco artists call this compass, where you kind of mark out the kind of the time of the music in a certain way, and in rumba it's called clave gets used. So the kind of musical, the music kind of hangs on a kind of rhythmic framework, which allows the information to be transmitted, if we think about it in an information computing way, and this kind of gets embodied in the kind of minds and the somehow in people to such an extent they kind of have that ingrained in them and then are able to freely sort of sing a melody or a rhythmic change over the top of it. So I was going to just show you, my guitar teacher just don't kind of show me a Paco de Lucia falsetto through singing it, because it kind of shows what I mean of that kind of... So he's kind of tapping out the compass in his hand there. So I'm going to try and demonstrate something now, so to kind of show you what I've been making as a kind of response to this and thinking about how I can play with it. So let me just plug in my camera quickly. And actually, before I do that, I'll just demonstrate how I'm going to try and I'm going to sing some binary text and make it as text. But I've kind of adopted a way of kind of trying to understand the rhythm of it and be able to kind of freely manipulate it. I've kind of taken an idea from a South Indian, the Carnatic conical system that I mentioned briefly, which uses the hands and the body and then singing to kind of to construct the rhythm. So quite often you tap with your hands like this and then sing over the top of it. So if we have 5 kind of beats like that and go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then you can place a kind of tap on the downbeat and a cat on the upbeat, and we can find a kind of phrase which is common to all of these things here, which is a series of letters actually, which I'll show. Which is that they all have this kind of particular phrase, so on a tap and cat on the 4 and 4.5, and then a cat at the end. So it's taka, cat, taka, cat. So that gives a kind of, that's almost like a kind of, you can think of that as a kind of compass, or as I mentioned with Afro-Cuban music, a clave to sort of base this on. So I'll just get the camera going. And you should be able to see that. And I need to turn it on. Yeah, so here we have a sort of a little screen. So I've developed this in a number of ways. I've made kind of software for my laptop, for the iPhone, and I kind of recently got into doing some of the small microcontroller just because it's actually, I found it quite hard to deal with the sort of timing issues that you get with kind of phones and other forms of technology. So I'll try and be quiet and use this and say a few things. Ta, ta, ga, 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 ta, ga, ga. Ah, strange, hang on. It doesn't like that. Let me just run it again. It does this sometimes. Ta, ta, ga, 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 ta, ga, ga. Ga, ta, ta, ga, ga. ka-ta, ta-ka, ka. Ka-ta, ka-ta, ta, ka-ta, ka-ta, ta-ka, ka. Ka-ta, ka-ta, ta-ka, ka. Oh, I'm missing it. I'm going to skip it. Ka-ta, ka-ta, ta-ka, ka. Easier without my house. So that's kind of almost saying hello on it. And what I can kind of demonstrate the sort of way you can kind of navigate through doing text. I'll do a kind of just try and do an ABC view very quickly. Ga, taka, ga, ta, taka, ga, ta, taka, ga. So that was an ABC that C didn't come up then. Ga, ta, ka, ga. But by using the sort of the kind of rhythmic strengths, kind of compass, the sort of framework and locating the rhythms, it kind of allows you to sort of manipulate the information in kind of quite a free sort of way. If I just try and see if I can do a capsule, which means a kind of variation on the last bits of the information. So, ga, ga, ga. Not me. Ga, taka, ga, taka, ga. Restart this one. Ga, ga, ga. Ga, ga, ga. Ga, ga, ga. Oh, I keep on missing. Okay, well, I'm at a short time now. I feel like I'm kind of...
No, we started 5 minutes.
Another 5 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah, I won't go on trying to kind of use that. I'll set it up later and people can have a play themselves. Because I'll carry on just with the last bit of text, I think. So that's kind of a demonstration of the sort of things I've been making, and obviously it's making this sort of technology. This makes me quite amazed how computers can actually send information so quickly, and because if we were to sort of think about the actual speed these things are happening within computers, it's quite kind of a lot faster. And I think I have it written down somewhere. Yeah, so a kind of 9,600 bits per second connection, which is pretty slow by these standards, would be kind of something like 576,000 BPM, and this was 80 BPM. I'd kind of go up to 120 would be comfortable, but it's 4,800 times faster. So yeah, a lot faster. So I guess the question now would be probably what you might be thinking is, so kind of why bother to explore data signals at slow speeds where they're both performable and able to be perceived clearly by humans and machines? By entering the signal at this level, it's my hope that both the performer and the audience understand the structure of the data communications a bit more clearly. And for me, the interest kind of also developed out of making electronic music making machines and considering how we find a sense of liveness or sense of risk when working with computers and music. So pioneers of laptop music in the late 90s on labels such as Mago and others found this sort of kind of sense of liveness of running audio on computers that were only just powerful enough to do the job. And I guess like currently live coders are kind of finding that liveness through typing the code for their music live while being scrutinised by their audience. I'm also interested in the philosopher Bernard Stiegler, who's argued that technical inventions are naturalised by man, as the operations carried out by the human body are delegated to machines and technologies. So he's kind of written extensively about how humans end up doing less and machines end up doing more. and the impact this kind of has on our ability to create culture, creating what he calls a sort of symbolic misery, where we we can't create new symbols because the kind of mechanisms are so dominated by machines, so it kind of leaves us with a sense of frustration. So within this context of increasing technologies to produce music and that arguably make us do less, it seems interesting to develop technologies that force the performer to maximise their bandwidth and to return to kind of computer-based instruments. We could frame this in terms of the importance of the resistance of the interface, and this has been discussed by people like Aidan Evans and Paul Magnuson, who talk about how interfaces need to be developed with a kind of resistance in them to kind of be enjoyable to play, and I feel like a lot of kind of electronic instruments are, kind of do all the work for you, so don't kind of provide that resistance. And there's also, just in terms of further research, there's also a possibility here to reflect on kind of the theory coming out of new materialists such as Rosie Pedotti, who's kind of highly critical of trying to advance humans through technological enhancement. And I guess that's kind of one of my reasons of kind of asking about the augmented reality and that kind of thing. Where are we going in the future with these sort of technologies? And I kind of, so I'm sort of proposing with this sort of technology more and more prevalent in our daily lives, it seems reasonable not to try and out-tech them, but to simply just try and learn their language. So that's done, I think.